Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon. Good afternoon once again. My name is Tolu and I'll be your host for today. So right about now, I would like for us to drop in the chat what your name is, where you're joining in from, and what your expectation is for today. Like I rightly mentioned, my name is Tolu. I'm joining from Lagos, Nigeria. And my expectation for today is that we're going to have an engaging session and that we're going to have an insightful session as well. I'll be in the chat right now to see our comments and we'll pick it up from there. Okay, thank you, Oladayo. Oladayo is joining from Lagos. That's nice. And what's your expectation? What's your expectation for today? Is to get enlightened. I like that. Okay. We have Olatokunbo Demola Salami joining from Lagos to learn more about business impact. That's a good one. If I remember correctly, Olatokunbo is the researcher, right? Am I correct? Tokunbo, you could just give me a thumbs. Okay. So I remember correctly. It's nice to have you on the call again. In fact, I think we should give you a round of applause. I don't think you've missed any webinar since you started joining, and that's a good one. Thank you, Tokumbo. Okay, Oladaya says, my expectation is to get more enlightened. That is brilliant. I like that you want more enlightenment, but could you just indulge me and recite the specifics? You want to get enlightened, yes, but in what area? That's to Oladayo. And for Favor, okay, Favor says she's joining from Abuja. There are no specifics to expectations, but she's hoping to get the best she can. That is also another brilliant one. Thank you, Favor. Thank you, Opeyemi, and thank you, Oladayo. Oladayo, I am still waiting for your expectation. Yes, you said that you want to get enlightened, but it would also be nice to know in what specific area so that at the end of the session, we can come back to this and be sure that our expectations were met and most importantly, exceeded. We also have Victoria on the call. Victoria says she's joining from Lagos, Nigeria. Our expectation for today is to learn more about business. Oh, that's nice. So today we're looking at measuring learning business impact, and I am 100% certain that our facilitator is going to do justice to that. So right about now, I am going to move on and welcome you properly. Like I mentioned, we're looking at measuring learning business impact. And this webinar is being hosted by Crosstie Solutions. Crosstie Solutions is a people development and management consulting organization. What we do is we focus on the people that actually make the organization stand. We know that the organization is not necessarily the building, but every individual that makes up the teams, and we're particular about their growth in terms of knowledge, skills, and the attitude that can help them deliver optimally on the job. At Crosstie, we pride ourselves with our 3 core values, which is transformation, excellence, as well as experience. And for transformation, we hope that by the end of this session, you would be better at what you do. We also understand that the experience is something that should not be overlooked, and that is why we're going to try as much as possible to keep to time and also deliver excellently. Today, we have a special person on the call, and that person is Gabriel Balogun, who happens to be the facilitator for this session. And Gabriel Balogun is the Director of Global Talent Development at MoneyPoint Group. He is an L&D strategist and is also an author. He is an organizational capability strategist, author, and executive educator whose work focuses on helping organizations close the gap between strategy and execution. And he is the creator of the Capability Development System, which is a practical framework that helps organizations align their leadership, talent, and development with business priorities. So for Gabriel Balogun, it is beyond having isolated training initiatives, but seeing how we can build a system whereby everybody is properly aligned and we can meet the strategic goal for the organization part-time. In 2024, it was also recognized as a disruptive enterprise L&D leader, both in Nigeria and Kenya. Talking about is teaching and speaking focus. It's on organizational capability, leadership development, as well as talent strategy. I had earlier mentioned that Gabriel Balogun is an author, and he has written 2 books. We have one on training needs analysis, as well as driving business growth. Looking at his expertise and consulting focus, it's on L&D strategy and system, talent and workforce capability, leadership development, curriculum design, digital academic systems. And today we're going to be learning about how do we measure learning such that we're even able to get the buy-in of the management, the CFO, because you would agree with me that most times the first budget to be cut is L&D budget, but he's going to walk us through how we can properly position ourselves such that the management is able to reason with us and also align. Ladies and gentlemen, please make welcome Gabriel Balogun. Thank you. A round of applause for him. You can use the emojis and just show some love. Thank you, everyone. Over to you, Gabriel.
Hey, everyone. I'm good. Am I audible?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, beautiful. I'm going to, by show of hands, if you work in learning and development, raise your hands, please. I want to know the people in the room. You work in learning and development, please raise your hand. Okay, so a fraction of us.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Louisa Vema. Happy to join you guys.
Nice to meet you, Louisa. Okay. This is going to be quite interesting. I'm trying to share my screen in a way that allows us to have fun. But it seems like it's not working today. Okay. All right. Today I want to talk about something that I think is quite misunderstood in the learning, training, HR space. And it's this big myth that we don't know what to measure when we train people. Most of the time, you go through training programs. And like Tolu said, the first thing that everybody wants to cut is the training budget for reasons best known to them. And you're wondering, why are you cutting my budget? What did we do to deserve this cutting of budget? Right? And my expectation is that by the end of this meeting or this training program, I will be able to share with you 1, 2, 3 things I know about how to measure the impact of your learning programs. And you can as well just apply that to your day-to-day work. So first things first, learning programs don't deliver business results. I know this may come as a shock because the training itself says that you are here to learn how to measure learning business impact. But the honest truth is, learning programs don't deliver business results. By show of hands, how many of you, I wish I had an L&D, a full L&D audience. This would have banned. How many of you have been asked on the call to prove the impact of the training programs that you've done before? How many of you on the call have been asked to prove? All right, great. And Kate, Esther, were you guys able to prove, or were you girls? Were you able to prove the impact of your training programs beyond just training completion and how many people passed the assessment or submitted the assessment? Were you ever able to prove the impact of the training on the business itself? You can use the chat to answer me, or you can just use the chat to answer me. I guess the answer is no. And the reason why is by the way training works. Training was never created to drive business results. Which begs the question, where did the obsession with this whole, if you cannot tie training to business impact, or if you cannot tie training to business goals, then you shouldn't be doing training? All right, Chokumbo. And it came as a result of the fear of the CEO. You know how they say the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. The fear of your CFO, sometimes in business, is the beginning of, should I use the word, cunningness? Because what learning primarily does is to shape, not necessarily change. Learning exists to shape human behaviors. That very definition makes it difficult to prove learning. Because in psychology, we are taught that behaviors can only be changed by the people whose behaviors need to be changed. So the choice theory is one of the axioms says that the only person that can change their behavior is the person himself. So if you design learning to change behavior, you shot yourself in the leg. If you design learning to drive business impact, in quotes, you shot yourself in the leg. And this is why. Business impacts are driven by performance. Performance are driven by standards. Standards are created by behaviors, and learning exists to pretty much move people from performing at one standard to the other. Let me tell you a story of how I discovered this the hard way. I like to call it the CS miscategorization problem. So at work, the head of CS2, CS is short for customer support, came to me. I was like, our people are not, they're not performing at their best. Our miscategorization rate is high. Miscategorization is a cool word for saying the way they categorize people's customers' problem, is wrong. And we need you to fix it. So me now, in my attempts to try to, I use two screens, so I might not be staring at you, I'm staring at the other one, right? In my attempts to, try to prove that I want to justify this training, I said, what is the business metric? What's the key KPI you report to your online manager? And the guy told me, we have a rate called the miscategorization rate. That is what we report to our manager. And I'm like, get it. That's what we are going to use as the success metrics for this training. So I went on to guarantee that by the time we're done with this training, the miscategorization rate will drop from X to Y. So the miscategorization rate was 0.9. Again, that's a very good number. Out of 10 customers, less than 1% were miscategorized, right? But he didn't like 0.9, he wanted 0.5. So I'm like, 0.5 is our target. Our training must drive us to 0.5. So what did I do? I got my team together and they built out this beautiful training to help move miscategorization rates from 0.9 to 0.5. Dear brothers and sisters, I'm happy to tell you that we failed woefully. And this is why we failed. We failed because, number one, we chose a metric that was out of our control. There were many things that contributed to the 0.9 miscategorization. So even when we did our diagnoses and our gap analysis, it was premature because we did not deep dive into the problem. We just took hook, line, sinker what the head of CS2 told us, and we ran with that. And what that eventually happened was that at the end of the first quarter, after running the training, 90 days after the training, miscategorization rate dropped from 0.9 to 0.6. So we failed. And guess what? It was like your training did not work. Because what did we promise? Our success criteria was 0.5, but we had a 0.6. So when I sat with my mentor and I told my mentor, I was like, my team is demoralized. We promised our customer this and we did not deliver and all of that. And he said the problem was that you chose the wrong thing to measure. So if there's anything you want to write down as a first point, is that you do not set the business metric as your learning impact metric when evaluating the success of your program. The success of your training program is not the business result. It is something different. And I'll tell you what it is. But rule one, never set the business result as the success metric for your training program. And so what did I do? I said, if that's not the case, then how do I solve this? And then in my research, I discovered that actually what makes a business result, what helps teams to achieve business results is that they operate at a certain performance level. But for people to operate at a certain performance level, there must be definitions of what good performance looks like. We call it standards. So the job of learning is to ensure that people are performing at that standard. Because if they perform at that high standards, then the high standards automatically means that they are performing well. And by performing well, they meet the business results. Or may not meet it because of another reason. So he told me that you need to focus on measuring the things that you can control, which is simply how people can do the work that they are doing better. And so what did I do? I told my team that I told the head of business to give us another 3 months. And we spent like the first month just deep diving into the team again. So we said, this is the CS team. It has 7 units. We looked at the categorization rate of every unit across the 7 units. And we discovered that it was not the same. Some people had 0.10, some people had 1.1, some people had 0.5, some people had 0.8. So the accumulation was what gave us 0. The average was what gave us 0.6. So we sat with each team and said, why? And we spoke to the employees and said, what happens when you are faced with a problem and you don't know how to categorize it properly? Many of them said, we'll just put it anywhere we want to put. And we discovered the root causes, the thing that was causing those high miscategorization rate across each team. So what did that give us? It gave us 7 targeted programs, not one generic program for the CS team. Because each team had a different reason why their rate was high. Some it was a knowledge problem. Some it was a incentive problem. Some it was not the knowledge problem. They were doing well already. They could not go lower than what they were. The other problem was that the tool was not giving them what they wanted to do. So by the time we did the second set of trainings, it was not one generic training for the entire team. It was different trainings for different teams. And what we were measuring was their ability to do the work better than where they were doing it before. So we did a test. Everybody was doing it at this level. Okay. Then we did a training to move them from level 1 to like level 4. And then we measured at the end of training, were they performing at that level 4? I'm happy to tell you that 3 months after we delivered that training, the miscategorization rate dropped from 0.6 to 0.49. And do you know what changed? Because we chose to focus on the things that we could control, it elevated everybody's level to begin to operate at what was expected. And then that ripple effect was what changed the business results. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Do you understand what I'm saying? Give me thumbs up. So the job of learning in the real sense is to improve people's ability to perform. Learning was not created. You don't create learning programs to drive business results. You create learning programs to improve people's ability to perform on the job. All right. When I started this training, my goal was to teach you a framework. I call it the 2 chains framework. And if you understand the 2 chains framework, it allows you to design the right learning experience and measure the impact of that learning experience. So the mental model or the framework that I want you to leave this session with, because it's a short session and I'm sort of rushing through my slides, is this. If you're learning or you design learning or training programs, remember to always design learning from the business backward and measure impact from the learning forwards. Now, if you remember my story that I told you, by the time we sat down with the business to understand this is the miscategorization rates, this is the standards you're supposed to be performing at that ensures that we have this metric. But this is where you are performing at the moment. That is what it means to design learning from the business backward. So, like, this is what you wanted to achieve. This is the work that you need to do to achieve it. This is the definition of what good performance of that work looks like. And then that's what we use to design the training program. And then when we were going to measure, we did not start measuring from the business impact. We started measuring impact from, okay, now that we've trained you to do this work better, are you doing it better? Oh, because you are doing the work better now, you're operating at that performance level that you should operate. And then the business is enjoying the benefits of your performance. No, the framework doesn't have anything to do with 70-20-10. I'm going to show you what the mental model is. So this is the framework. And again, it's my proprietary knowledge. It's stuff that I've used that have worked for me. Because again, the 70-30, 70-20-10 framework is sweet to teach, but it's one of the most confusing frameworks in the market. And anyway, that's not a conversation for today. So when you want to design programs that have correct impact on the business, you start with the results that you are trying to desire, the result that the business desires. In my case, it was to reduce the miscategorization rate from 0.9 to 0.5. Or pretty much that was not the result. The business result was to properly diagnose customer complaints. That was the business results. The end goal of the rate is that every customer complaints that come is placed in the right box. That was the business results. Now, the KPI that shows that evidence that shows that the business results is happening is what we call the miscategorization rate. Now, the work that we did was to define, okay, what do people do every day that contributes to this KPI, which is the miscategorization rate? So we're like, when a request is made, there's an option to select which box to put it into and all of those things. And then we now ask, what are the standards that determine that these people are doing it well? And then what are the skills they need to do to operate in those standards? What we call capability. And then how do we build learning that allows them to develop those capability so that they can operate in those standards and deliver the right kind of work that they need to deliver so that they can impact the metrics that drives the business results. Are you guys getting what I'm saying? If you understand what I'm saying, let me know. If you don't understand, you can drop a question in the chat and I'll go over it again. Good. I assume we understand what I'm saying. Now, the measurements framework. So, I told you, I called you the 2 chains framework. The first chain is the design chain, how you design the learning. It's good to say this here that the most impactful training programs don't start after the training. They start even before the first content is designed. Any program that will be impactful is impactful because the program was designed well. So if you don't understand how to design a training program properly, you can never measure or evaluate the success of that program. Check it. The best programs in the world were designed specifically to deliver that result. That is why the first training I did for the miscategorization failed. Because what did I do? I did a generic training for everybody. And it failed. Because it was not designed to solve the problem of each team within that department. But when we redesigned it the second time, we designed unique programs for each team in the department. And those were the things that allowed us to improve the standard of their work, which in turn helped them meet the business results that they wanted. Now, after the training, we wanted to measure impact. And so what we did was to first ask ourselves, this training program that we've delivered, do people actually learn in it? And then, okay, they learned something, but did they learn the right thing? Which meant, did they begin to do the work at the standards that they were supposed to do the work? And then by doing the work, did they perform it according to the standards? And if the answer is yes, did the KPIs improve? The answer was yes. And then eventually, if the KPIs improved, that means the business results were achieved. So this is the two chains that explains the concept of designing learning from the business backwards and measuring impact from the learning forwards. Again, you can't find this anywhere. It's proprietary. So you might as well maybe take screenshots of this. You have my permission to take screenshots of this, and then this, and then this, as it helps you to, so you can understand it more. And then you can watch the replay of this video to really understand what I'm saying. So with all that I have said, what do you really measure? When we say you are measuring forward like this, so what do you measure as a learning and development professional? You measure three things. And these are the three things you're supposed to tell your superior or your head of HR or wherever you deliver the training program for. You measure first, what's the performance of the people before we did this training program? I started by saying that learning doesn't drive business results. And I went on to tell you that it is performance of the people that drives business results. But people can only perform, right, if there are clear definitions of what good looks like. In learning and development, we call that competency standards, right, or capability standards. It's what we popularly call the competency framework in many organizations because it defines what you should be doing at each level, at each role within the organization. Now, your job as an L&D professional that wants to build an impactful program is to first define or discover how are they performing the necessary tasks with respect to the standards, right? And you must measure it. You must have a number. And this is where I think many colleagues miss it. They just jump straight into training. Somebody comes to you and say, we need a communication training, and boom, you're Udemy, you are calling one faculty person, you are putting out a call for application. We need people that can come and train on communication. We need to, without truly understanding what you are trying to solve, what problem you're trying to solve. So you must measure performance before you even think of even writing the first script or designing the first slide. And the only way you can measure the performance of the team is by asking the head of department, do you have a definition of what good looks like for your team? If they don't have a definition of what good looks like for their team, you cannot solve their problem. You cannot. Because how do you know they are not even performing well? Someone comes to you and tell you, oh, my people have a communication problem. And you're like, okay. They have a communication problem with respect to what standard? What does good communication look like? Do you have it mapped out? Have you shared it with the team before? Have you showed them what good communication looks like? If you've never done all those things, you don't need a training. You need to show them. It's when you've shown them and they are not still performing according to that standard, that's when you need a training. So today, many organizations are burning money. Like they are burning money because they are not doing the work first of really understanding what does great work look like for this function at this level. And until that is mapped out, training will never, and I say this with someone who has authority in this space, will never deliver impact. Never. Because you are training for the wrong thing. You're not training for the right thing. That's why your doctor would always ask you first, what is wrong. You know, if you go and meet a doctor, and some of us have felt this before, you are feeling one kind. You just went to meet the doctor, and as you met the doctor, he didn't even ask any question. He just looked at you, say, what's the matter? He said, my head is aching. He said, go and buy malaria drug. You'll be shocked. You'll be like, you didn't check my BP, you didn't check my vitals, you didn't check anything. How do you know it's malaria? And in our mind, we say this doctor is a quack. But could it be that many L&D professionals are quack? Many training companies are quack? Because we are not diagnosing the problem before offering a solution. We're quick to send the L&D manager, I offer training in communications, in this and that, and then you're wondering why they're not buying from you. Or you do L&D internally, and then an HOD comes to you and say they have a problem, and you just deliver training, and nothing changes. They will not come to you again now. That is why the CFO is quick to cut your budgets. But if you solve the problem, you've done the work for the first person, the second HOD, the third HOD, by the time they want to cut your budget, you just call those HODs and say, please, tell CFO how we helped you. Right? So you must measure performance. And the only way to measure performance is to insist that the department or the people you are training must define what good looks like first. They must define the standard of performance that they want, because that's what you are going to measure the current team. So it's like saying, let me use a typical example. Everybody knows how to make food. Everybody knows how to make noodles. So let's say that somebody wants to make noodles, a team of, let's just say somebody makes noodles, and they make the first noodles, and they boil the water, they make the noodles, but they don't add the sauce, the ingredients, and they bring it to you. Of course, you would say that Indomie or that noodles is bland. It has no taste. Abi? If you say, you need to go and learn how to make noodles, or you say this person cannot make noodles, the question is, what does good noodles look like? Okay, good noodles looks like noodles that has the sauce in it. It is defined. So whoever is training that person has to take that definition to say, after you've boiled the water and you've put the noodles, you must put the sauce, because that is what good noodles looks like. If you do not put the sauce, then you've made terrible noodles. So you that you are coming in, before you train, you will test the person that is making the noodles and say, your guy said that you don't know how to make noodles. Oh yeah, make the noodles in my presence. You observe. So the person makes the noodles and you see that, they actually are not putting the sauce. They are not cutting. So the standard is like the recipe that your guys, the person that you're making for has told you. Put noodles, put chop pepper into it, put the sauce, chop onions into it, put a bit of cabbage into it. But what the person is doing is just making noodles, no sauce, nothing. When you observe, you measure and say, okay, at the end of this exercise, this person made noodles without following the recipe. Then you build a training program on how the person can make noodles with the recipe. And then after the training program, you allow the person make the noodles again. That's what we call performance after learning. So the person makes the noodles again. And then you are comparing the first time they made it before my training, there was nothing in it. It was just noodles alone. Now that they've made it after my training, there's cabbage, there's chopped onions, there's chopped pepper, there's sauce in it, there's spice in it, and all of those things. That is your learning impact, brothers and sisters. Nothing more. Don't stress yourself. That is your learning impact. If they ask you what did your training do, just show them before the training, this is what they were making. After the training, this is what they are making. And close your shop and move on to another program. That's what learning impact is, right? And then the third thing is you now check that. So within the first 30 days of training the person actually made the noodles with the recipe. Okay, 60 days after the training, the person did the same thing again. 90 days after the training, the person did the same thing again. Perfect. The person has sustained performance. So henceforth, the person can never make a noodles that is bland again. I've just used the noodles example to explain everything that I've been saying since. Do you guys get it now? Just forget all the big grammar I've spoken. If you understand the noodles example, that's everything I'm teaching. Don't try to memorize. Just understand the story. If you understand the noodles example, then you have made that. If you continue to do your training work like that, you already have impactful training. Because the chef that you taught will say, I didn't used to make right noodles before. Now I know how to make noodles with the recipe, and my boss is happy. Shikina, the boss will say, it's true. My chef noodles used to be bland before. Now the noodles is sweet. You're happy. Would they recommend you? Yes. If the boss friend comes and says, I have one chef that does not know how to make noodles, who's the best person they will call? You. That is learning impact. Don't chase more than that. That literally is learning impact. And because you are focused on what you can control, which is teaching the person, the chef, to make noodles according to the recipe that the Oga wants, you have already met the impact that the Oga needs. So when the Oga eats the noodles of the chef, you can't control the taste the Oga will have of that noodles, but you can control that the guy will make it according to the recipe. So when the Oga eats it day one, and he has not brushed his mouth, he will say this noodles taste nice. But imagine that the Oga just brushed his teeth, and then he wants to eat the noodles. You know it will taste different. But is that really the noodles' fault? No. It is because Oga brushed his teeth. So that is what we talk about when we say there are more things that can be causing a business not to meet its results beyond training, beyond a skill problem. So in the case of the Oga, it's no more a skill problem because the chef can make noodles. Well, it is now the fact that the Oga brought in an external thing into his mouth that changed his taste bud before he ate noodles. So the noodles is not tasting the way it should taste. So the problem has grown beyond a training problem. It is now that Oga, don't eat or don't brush your teeth, or brush your teeth and eat 30 minutes after you have brushed your teeth, or brush your teeth and rinse your mouth well with water so that you can get the result that you want from your taste bud when you eat the noodles. Makes sense, guys. And this is why I love in-person sessions, because I can see your faces and then I know if I'm connecting or not. It literally just feels like, I don't know. Anyway, but it's fine. We don't have as much time as we would wish. So when you measure these three things, then you tell a story of how your program contributed to what? The business, by improving the quality of the team's performance. So your job as L&D professionals is to improve the quality of the individual or team's performance. If their performance improves, then they will deliver on the business results. If their performance does not improve, then the business results will not be met. But there are possibilities that their performance may improve and other things may still affect it. So in the real sense, you now see that learning's job is not to improve business results. See, in quotes. It's not learning's job alone. It's not training's job alone. A lot of things must be involved. Take sales, for instance. If you are paying your sales agents poor commission, no matter how much you train them, they will not sell well because they're not making enough money selling for you. So imagine the head of sales comes and says that my people are not selling well, and you just launch into creating training without properly doing a diagnosis of understand what are the reasons why you are not selling, Mr. A in sales, Mr. B. Mr. A will tell you, the money they are giving us is small, Jare. I don't have morale. There's no ginger to sell. Mr. B will say, I know how to sell very well. Oh. but the money is bad. Another person can say, I don't know how to sell at all, and I don't even bother about the money. You see that you already have 3 different problems. You have a knowledge problem, you have a skill problem, and you have a incentive problem. Training will solve the knowledge and the skill problem, but training will never solve the incentive problem. So your job as an L&D professional is to do a proper gap analysis. You list out the gaps that exist and their root causes, and you submit it to the HOD and say, see, there are 5 gaps, but I can only solve 2. The other 3 is dependent on you because it is out of my control. So that when you deliver training and you show him impact report of how their performance has gotten better with respect to the gaps, how you've closed those 2 gaps that you identified, even if they don't meet performance, they can't hold you anymore because the other 3 gaps have to be closed. So not every performance gap is a training gap. Not every performance gap is a training problem. Sometimes it can be a leadership problem. Sometimes it can be a tool problem. Sometimes it can be a regulatory problem, a compliance problem. I think that for everybody on this call that really wants to understand this thing, my book on collecting training needs easily pretty much teaches you how to do this effortlessly. In that book, I shared a framework, one of my other frameworks, again, that I've not, maybe I need to start trademarking these things, but it's fine. It's called RAGIA, and it talks about a system of how you can collect the right training needs. It's primarily a diagnostic tool. That book will teach you how to do proper diagnosis for the training programs that land on your decks. It's free. It's free, and it's soft copy. So you can visit my LinkedIn page. Check my featured stories, one of the things there. Tolu can be kind enough to mail the link, download link to you, and you can also read it. But yeah, it's free. It's out there for everybody to use. And it's in that book that I sort of walked you through. So when people ask you for training, these are the things you should ask them. What problem are we trying to solve? And you must ask them in this order. It's not asking them scattered. You must ask them in this order. What problem are you trying to solve? What tasks or decisions are affected the most by this problem? What does good performance look like with respect to those tasks? How well are people performing today, right? And how will we know this performance has improved? If they can successfully answer these questions, then you have a very clear diagnosis of where the problem is. And then with that, you can build your training program, from this, you can also define what your success metrics will be. So when you build your training program, you begin to evaluate 30 days after the training program with respect to our success metrics. Are people getting there? Then 60 days and 90 days. I'm going to tell you this as I close. You only understand this better when you practice. No matter how much you sit on the call and hear me talk about this thing, you will not understand it until you practice. And I will guarantee you that you would make a lot of mistakes when you practice. And that's okay, right? It's in making those mistakes that you will get better. I didn't get to where I am today by joining calls and not practicing, right? So practice. You may do the first diagnosis and it may not be correct. Like I said with my story, as experienced as I was, I still made that mistake, right? But by the time I sat with it again and I understood it, I've made less mistakes. You can only get it right once. And let me end with this. Learning improves people's ability to perform. Learning doesn't drive business results. Learning improves people's ability to perform. But performance is what improves and drives business results. If you understand this and you put it to practice many of the things that I've said, I guarantee you that you would create impactful learning experiences that people will recommend you to do more for others. On this note, thank you very much for listening. If you have questions, now will be a good time to ask me those questions. And Silas, thank you for taking notes. But yeah, Tolu, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Gabriel, and thank you, everyone. I believe everyone can agree with me that it has been an amazing session so far, and I can see the comments in the chat. And also, while Gabriel was facilitating the session, we had a lot of reactions, the thumbs up. That just shows that everyone is following and they've learned a lot. So I am going through the chat to pick out something that Olatokunbo had mentioned, and he had said that he's seeing and learning a different L&D from the conventional manufacturing training. And that just shows that today was not a waste of his time. Today was definitely not a waste of my time as well. So thank you everyone for staying up until this session. So before Gabriel drops off, there are some questions that we have. And the first question is around sustained performance. You had mentioned that as L&D professionals, when we're trying to measure our impact, what we should measure is sustained performance. And there is a question around how do we ensure sustained performance? Because there are times where it's not even in the KPI, and you would agree with me that if certain things are not in your KPI, people will most likely not take it seriously. So how do we balance it such that the performance is not just, for lack of better words, initial gra and everybody just moves on?
If I get your question correctly, it's the question of how do you sustain the performance that you get after training? Abi? Especially if that training that they did is not a KPI for the people you did the training for.
Yes.
Is that it?
Yes.
All right. Why design a training for a people when that training doesn't affect their KPI? That's a waste of your time. Pretty much a waste of your time. One of the things that I've tried to do in the last 10, not 10 years, in the last 1 year, maybe I'll be a bit more vocal about it, is to start calling out colleagues that are order takers. It makes no sense that your day-to-day job, and again, I'm not talking to anybody on the call, is to just collect orders like a waiter and just go and prepare it and deliver it. It's bad for your growth because it's not challenging enough for that individual. 1, 2, it also doesn't give room to get better at the work because you're not diagnosing, you're not questioning, you're not doing any of those things. So what you want to do, in all honesty, is only deliver training programs that are tied to the success of that thing. So please go back to slide 3, please. Slide 13. And that's why you see that in slide 13, the question that you ask after what problem you are trying to solve is the question of what tasks are affected by this problem. Somebody should not come and tell you that the problem I'm trying to solve is that my people cannot write good emails. And then you are doing a training for them on how to speak in public. How are they correlated? They are not. You are wasting your time as the training person. You are wasting the time of the people in class. Time is life. Like every time, every countdown is a countdown to somebody's death. By tomorrow, you are 1 day closer to, no, everybody's closer to their deaths. That's how you should think about time. So why burn your time Why burn your, maybe if I replace time with life, you will get it. Why burn your life and the life of people, training them on things that do not matter? So if the training is not going to contribute to solving the problem that you have defined, don't do it. Honestly, don't. That's why when somebody comes to you and say, I have a leadership problem, deep dive to understand what kind of leadership problem. Because leadership problem is not a problem. You must be very specific. Oh, because you may find out that the leadership problem is that the person cannot give feedback. But you are going to do leadership training on self-leadership. You see how you have wasted the time of everybody. That's why I am a big fan of micro-learning and targeted learning, because if the problem is feedback, let me give you a 30 minutes video or a one hour video or a 15 seconds video on giving feedback, and then give you practice tests where you are practicing how to give feedback, and you do that for 2 hours. You become better at giving feedback than somebody that sits in a one-day training on leadership. So that's why, again, if you remember what I said, the evaluation and the measurement and the success of every training begins with the diagnosis of that training. If you fail at diagnosis, if you fail at defining what the problem is, defining the tasks and the decisions that are affected by that problem, and you fail at defining what good performance looks like, you have wasted the time of you, the vendor, and every other person involved in that program. So we need to stop being order takers. We need to stop being people that they will dump things on our decks. I'm going, before this call, I was having a back and forth with a senior vice president that wanted me to go and train his people at Lagos Business School. I'm like, why? Why am I going to spend close to $1 million on training people in Lagos? Why? So I think that answers the question.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gabriel. So the key point is to move from being an order taker to really understand the problem that you're trying to solve. And that can only happen when you ask the right questions and not just, oh, okay, this person has said it. Yes, I'm going to do it. I'll just do it. I think another thing that stood out during your session was where you were helping us understand what the success metrics of our training program should be. So you had mentioned that it's not business results, but the goal should be to ensure people are doing their work according to standards. So if you say, I want this person to do a great job, what is a great job? Because I mean, great job is relative. What Tolu defines as great job might not be the same as what a Gabriel would define as great job. So it's to understand the standards, and that should be your success metrics. You had also spoken about when we're designing learning, we design from the business backwards. And when we're measuring the impact, we measure it from the learning forward. I would say that we've had such an amazing and insightful session so far. And before we all drop off, there is a feedback form for us to fill so that we feel the pulse of the room. How was the session? How did the facilitator deliver? And also, what kind of topics would you want for us to address moving forward? And before I go to the feedback form, I'd mentioned at the beginning that Crosstie Solutions is a people development and management consulting organization. And one of the trainings that we have is a complete employee series where we start with the professional staff, that's for entry level, the productive employee, effective team leader, competent manager, and then we have the purple course. And if you would like to engage Crosstie Solutions for any of your training needs, you can contact us using training@crosstiesolutions.com. And while we are at the feedback form, it would be nice to hear from someone live on the call. How was the session for you? What really stood out for you, and what are you going to implement going forward? I would like to call on Kate because Kate had mentioned that she is working in L&D. Kate, please confirm that you can hear me and you're in a position to speak.
Thank you. I heard you clearly. No, I'm not working on L&D. I'm not an L&D specialist, but I'm head of HR. The reason why I joined this training to be able to measure the impact of training on business performance. I'm happy. I like the way Gabriel has handled this topic. He made it as simple as it is. In fact, by the time we finished, I asked myself, so what is this measurement of training that we talk about every time? Impact of training on the business, because it's exactly what we do. And so I was expecting maybe something different, but I'm happy. He has made it lighter. He has made it simpler, and I'm happy to participate in this training. I've been getting invites from, Crossties, and honestly, this is the first time I've really, sometimes I register to join and something comes up and I'm not able to join, but honestly, it's worth it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we're really glad to hear that. Before you unmute, I would like to know, you had mentioned that this was a great one for you. It's now simpler. So what will be your action plan going forward? What are you going to do differently, or how do you want to transfer the knowledge to your team? Hi, Kate. Please confirm that you heard me.
Thank
Okay.
you. I heard you. Sorry, I didn't know I was muted. First, the understanding that we should never set business results as a success criteria for performance makes great sense. So learning actually is an enabler, and it helps to improve performance, which will improve the performance of the business, So for me, we have a training assessment form that we feel the employee going for training fills out, and upon return, it is sent back to the employee fills it. So that assessment form is kept in the file. Someone is tracking it 6 months after it's sent to the manager to assess the performance of the employee since after the training. So we use that to actually measure the impact of training. That feedback from the manager, we use it to assess the impact of the training. So I joined this training just to know, are there other ways I could do this? But looking at the training framework that was presented, first we need to determine the results that is desired. That's the pre-training stage. So our assessment form is in 3 stages: the pre-training stage, then the post-training stage, and then the assessment stage. So, like I said, I really value joining this class. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I am really glad that you got value for your time. Thank you once again. So I would go back to the feedback form and I would crave your indulgence to please fill the feedback form so that you can get certificate of attendance for this program. If you're done with the feedback form, please type done in the chat so that I know that everyone's going to get their certificate. Takes less than 30 seconds to fill the form and you get the certificate of attendance. And while that is going on, Gabriel, there is a question in the chat. And someone says, what's the difference between performance management specialist and learning and development specialist?
Interesting question. Performance management, like the name tells you, is to create systems, or a performance management specialist is someone that works in the performance management unit, whose primary job is to create systems that measures performance. Pretty much that. The learn and development specialist, on the other hand, is someone who works in the learn and development team that creates the systems that improves the performance of the people that work in the organization. One's job is to measure performance. The other one's job is to develop people to perform at the expected standards of the organization. Now, because their work are so interwoven, most organizations would have what is called a learning and performance unit or a learning and performance person whom they expect to do these two things together. But in most established organizations, for instance, in mine, we call that unit talent. So in that unit, there is talent management and then there is talent development. And those two subunits have they're responsible for building out the talent in the organization. So when you do performance management, again, it's a lot of things. Performance management is literally just one of the four things that should make up your talent unit. So there is somebody's job whose primary job is organizational design. That person's job is to ensure that the organization is structured properly and all of that. That person works with the performance manager or performance management specialist to build out what the goals of the organization are. So what are our objectives? What do every team chase as a performance? And build like a system that observes how every department in the organization and how every role in that department is contributing to the performance of the organization. Then the L&D guy is to partner with the performance guy to say, oh, this department is struggling. These are the root causes. Speak to the head of the department and figure out what the gaps are and close it. So it's an interwoven department, but they are different. I hope that helps anyway. If you sit with ChatGPT to give you a clearer definition than what I've said. What I've just said is the operational definition. But if you want something more textbooky, ChatGPT or even Google search can give you that.
Thank you very much, Gabriel, and thank you to everyone that has engaged, that has asked questions, and I'm sure that we've gotten the right response. We had shared our expectations at the beginning that we want to get enlightened, we want to know more, and I believe that expectation was met and it was also exceeded. So once again, thank you for joining. Beyond the webinar, you can join our WhatsApp group or community, which is Crosstie Knowledge, or you can scan the code to join. And on that group, we share updates that can help you as a professional regardless of your level. So once again, thank you all for tuning in early, for engaging, and for having a wonderful time with us. And on that note, we are going to bring our 7th edition of our webinar series to a close. Next month, we're going to have another interesting session. You can do well to check our website and register and also talk to your friends about it. You've gained a lot. You can share the news to others. Thank you, everyone, and do have a wonderful afternoon.